Hey, peace, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 232, economics. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Document in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. Just as an FYI, we are not certified financial planners. If you want a certified financial planner, please go to cfp.net. Look up one in your area. We do not give out financial advice here. We are just giving our opinion on the events and articles cited in the docket. Also, if you missed the previous crypto hangout Lionel had last night, please go back and review that hangout after this one, as it gives you some pretty good insight on crypto markets and blockchain. Complex Design, what's going on, brother? Tyrese Mitchell, what's going on, brother? Mayer Israel, peace, brother. So, as usual, give you guys at least 90 seconds to come in before we get started. Rael, what's going on, bro? All right, I think we can get started, man. We got 7 people watching and 12 likes. I think that's sufficient enough to we can launch it right now. All right, so first item on the docket is from Engadget. Give me a second, let me find my phone. All right, so tariffs are forcing big tech to move production out of China, though China previously warned against cooperating with U.S. trade restrictions. In response to the Trump administration's trade war with China, major tech companies are preparing to relocate key manufacturing operations. According to Bloomberg, Google is moving production out of its U.S.-bound Nest thermostats and motherboards to to Taiwan. The Wall Street Journal reports that Nintendo is shifting at least some production of its Switch console to Southeast Asia. At the same time, China has allegedly warned companies that they will face permanent consequences if they cooperate with Trump administration trade restrictions. Last month, the U.S. increased import tariffs on certain Chinese goods from 10% to 25%. If the tariff hike goes through, items like motherboards, smartphones, video game consoles, and computers could be all subject to 25% tax. At that rate, Nintendo might be forced to sell its consoles at a loss in the US. Some companies are better prepared than others to shift out of China if necessary. Apple, partner Foxconn Technology Group, said it would be able to manufacture all US-bound iPhones outside of China if it were forced to do so. Wistron Corp, a company that makes servers for Facebook and Microsoft, is reportedly looking to shift some production away from China, though it hasn't shared specifics. The trade wars are impacting Chinese companies too, most notably Huawei. In addition to losing Android support and being cut off from American chip makers, Huawei has reportedly slowed its manufacturing operations, according to the South China Morning Post. Foxconn has stopped Huawei phone production on several lines in response to reduced orders. The situation is still developing, and it's not clear if these new tariffs will be made final. If they do become permanent, some companies will fare better than others, but all global tech companies could find themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place. And we saw when the Game of Thrones finale was blocked in China. The trade wars could impact more than hardware. So this is serious business. This is not, about hogs and pigs and stuff like that. This is the real deal. This is where it really gets serious. When you start talking about putting 25% on iPhones and stuff like that, that becomes a problem. You imagine people are already paying up the nose right now for iPhones and iPads. If you're telling me that they have to pay 25% more on it, Apple's in trouble.
Peace, bro. Can you hear me, Mike?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. As if we needed a fundamental reason for those stocks to go down, But I still say the takeaway is everybody should be, have a list together, those high quality gaming companies and wireless companies. I'm not saying hodl. I'm not saying buy on the way down. I'm saying, we deal with learning how to read charts over here, but at some point in time, there'll be a time to buy, powerful global companies at cutout bin prices, and that's where we need to be. We need to be investing in high quality at fire sale prices.
Hmm. But I've talked about this a few months ago, or at least we did, that 55-inch TVs and up have gone up in price considerably. I remember buying a 60-inch for a decent amount last summer, and then I go back and look at it again, and now it's $7.99, $8.99. I didn't pay that much. I paid half of that. So I think what's happening is these companies are tacking on that 20 to 25% ahead of the tariffs even being put in place to procure the losses, so that even if the tariffs get worked out, they're baking this into the price now so that they can recoup the losses if there is potential losses to be had. So we got to pay attention to that, because it's not just the Apple iPhone; it's all the accessories that go with it that's manufactured there. All the little chargers, the lightning cables, the earbuds, the wireless AirPods, all the little cases and stuff that get manufactured there. All that stuff that gets manufactured in China will be subject to the 25% tariffs.
Yeah, well, over the next couple of weeks, we're
Hmm.
gonna get the earnings reports of Apple and stuff to find out how they perform from say April 1st through
Hmm.
the end of this month, and we'll see if they were really able to profit from marking it up, because they can put whatever price on it they want. In the end of the day, somebody has to buy it. You might be the only person that bought that TV.
It was the last one on the shelf too. Um, it's a really good TV, but the point that I'm making here is that if the tariffs do go into place, and if they can't make adjustments in time from a manufacturing standpoint, then that $20 or $30 Apple fast charger that people rely on so much, that's going to go up to $50. Who's going to pay $50 for an iPhone charger?
That's my point.
Hmm.
That's my point. They can set whatever price they want, but in the end, somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah, but you can justify it by saying it's a tariff. You can blame it on Trump. You can blame it on the administration. You can blame it on trade war. But at the end of the day, if the price is that, then you can see people start holding on to their phones longer, not
Right.
upgrading their TVs. That toaster that got all them little crumbs in it. I may not need a toaster for the next year, so I'm
That's
okay with that.
That's exactly what I'm saying, because
Hmm.
it's gonna get tight. You gotta choose between the heat bill in the winter or the, air conditioning, the electric bill to keep the air conditioning running in the summer, you
Hmm.
know? Who got time to pay that kind of money for, for a new for a product? People gonna, um, like you said, they're gonna hold on to things longer. I think the winner in a lot of this is gonna be, could be eBay.
Oh yeah. Like, can you elaborate on that?
Used.
Oh yeah.
We won't care about new. Well, why pay a tariff for something new when you can go on eBay and get somebody secondhand? Secondhand is going to be the new chic thing to do.
Hmm. That's a good point. Craigslist too. Craigslist is owned by eBay, so for all intents and purposes. So you'll see a whole lot of stuff. People trying to sell whatever TVs they have now, especially if it's fairly new and they can get a decent price on it. They'll go ahead and sell it.
Yeah, you making me think of, there's a brother in YouTube. He's got a channel called Save and Invest. I check him out. He does appliance repair. So people like that, if you can fix mechanical and electronic things,
Yep.
I think they're going to do well too.
And if this rides into the winter, into Q4, all those snow blowers that get manufactured in China, you thought you was paying 700 for that nice Toro snowblower. You you can bet that snowblower is gonna be like 1,500 easy.
Yeah, I think those all those A+ certifications holders are gonna, they might be able to spin this and make some money.
Hmm. All right, let me get to the next one.
I want to thank the chat for keeping up with the likes. The likes match the viewers. Y'all been doing pretty good with that. Thanks.
All right, this one is from The Verge. Apple says incoming China tariffs would be disastrous for business. The company doesn't want a 25% tariff on the iPhone. Apple says the Trump administration's tariffs could lower the company's economic output and put it at a disadvantage compared to its international competitors, particularly its Chinese counterparts. In Apple's letter to the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, the company argues that the proposed tariffs, which could impact nearly every Apple device, including the iPhone, MacBook, AirPods, and Apple Watch, would hurt Apple U.S. employees and its ability to contribute to the U.S. economy. Remember, we talked about that just a few minutes ago. All your AirPods and stuff like that are going to be affected. Accessories. Up until now, Apple has more or less skirted around the Trump administration's tariffs, despite its heavy reliance on Chinese manufacturing. Earlier rounds of China tariffs had avoided Apple's highest volume devices, like the iPhone and Apple Watch, but did have its adapters, chargers, cables, and cords affected. I just mentioned that. Just mentioned that a few minutes ago. In May, the Trump administration announced a massive expansion on those tariffs, levying a 25% tariff on nearly every category of goods that have been previously unaffected, including computers, smartphones, and televisions. Talked about televisions. Televisions. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative is currently seeking comment on those tariffs, which is why Apple wrote this letter. Other laptop manufacturers like Dell, HP, Intel, and Microsoft also wrote a letter in which they voiced their opposition to the increase. The tariffs will harm U.S. technology leaders, hindering their ability to innovate and compete in global marketplace. The company's right. If the tariffs go into effect, companies like Apple don't have many options to avoid them. One option would be to move their production out of China, which Apple is reportedly exploring. Nike reported. Uh, uh, Nike reported yesterday that Apple is looking to move to other Southeast Asian countries like India and Vietnam. Apart from shifting the production location, companies would either have to raise prices on their goods, which wouldn't be great for consumers, or absorb the cost of the tariff, which would reduce profit. Right in line with what we were talking about there, Dollar Will.
Yeah, yeah, that's where good management comes in. You
Hmm.
know, that's when those guys got to earn their pay.
Hmm.
You know, like along with one of them always saying, Apple got to buy something. They got too much money. They got to buy something. But that's another story. I'm waiting on that story. I'm waiting for people to ramp up on that with all these mergers and stuff going on and IPO. But that's another story.
My thing is they can open up a facility in uh in Mexico. That wouldn't, the tariffs there wouldn't be impacted by the trade war. I mean, you have some tariffs, but you don't have the 25% that they're putting on China. They should have procured this a long time ago from a manufacturing standpoint. I guess the other position is that they could have opened up a manufacturing facility in Africa, and they could have done that. Could have got better results because the trip from the continent to the East Coast would be substantially shorter in distance. You're talking just a few days as opposed to the week or 2 weeks that it takes to come from mainland. So I don't know. I don't know what these companies are thinking in the boardrooms because they should have had alternative resources set up for manufacturing.
Well, maybe just speculating. Maybe it's political. You know, you don't want to burn that bridge. You know, once you turn your back on your suppliers, it goes for greener pastures. It may not be so easy or possible even to go back. You know, in better times. So I speculate that there's a political component to it. You know, you don't want to break a long-term relationship for a short-term crisis, which probably we presume is going to be a short-term crisis.
This doesn't look short term. It's like they're gonna go into election season with this.
Well, in the bigger picture, even if it went that long, the relationship between Apple and those suppliers is longer than this administration. So it's a tough one. It's a tough call.
Hmm.
Let's see what we got in the chat. Anybody?
And you know what it's also going to affect. I mean, we talked about the electronics piece, but when you think about when you think about auto manufacturing, those modern cars that use the nice touch screens and stuff like that, and the components that go into the car's computer, all that stuff is going to be affected. That's not off the table either. All those electronics get manufactured in China.
Exactly, as if anybody wanted or needed automobiles to cost more.
Right. If they couldn't sell a car before, they damn sure aren't going to sell it now.
Right, right. So all these dominoes of this, I don't know what's keeping this market going. What's holding it up? I don't know. There's some good industrial strength. I'm not gonna say that. Yeah, it's the good stuff. I'll just leave it at that, holding it up because it's no rational reason why the S&P should have hit its all-time high today. There's no logical explanation for that.
All right, let me get to this next article. All right, this one is from foxbusiness.com. Apple, Black& Decker, and Steve Madden among U.S. companies moving production out of China. Here's the full list. Apple is reportedly considering moving up to 30% of their production from China to Southeast Asia. The latest company to join a small but growing list of firms that are evaluating their supply chains in the region amid continuing trade tensions with the U.S. While the spat between the U.S. and China spurred the decision, Apple tends to restructure its manufacturing operations even if a resolution is reached, according to Nike Asia Review. President Trump and President Xi Jinping are slated to meet at the upcoming G20 summit in Japan. While top trade deputies are expected to relaunch talks after negotiations broke down in May after the Chinese allegedly backtracked on previously agreed items. In the meantime, the White House is moving forward with fresh tariffs on another roughly $300 billion in Chinese imports. The administration has already placed levies on $250 billion in shipments. As corporate America braces for the outcome of the latest round of talks, some firms are already abandoning China in favor of the U.S., Mexico, or countries in Southeast Asia like Vietnam. I mentioned Mexico before. Let me read this list of companies. So GoPro will be affected. Hasbro, the toy maker, is shifting most of its production from China to Mexico. I said Mexico earlier. Vietnam and India due to Trump's tariffs. Steve Madden, the footwear and handbag maker, which ships the bulk of its goods from China, is shifting production to Cambodia. Executives at the Pawtucket, Rhode Island-based company previously said prices during the upcoming holiday shopping season would be higher as a result of the increased duties. Stanley Black & Decker. The firm is shifting production of its Hallmark Craftsman brand to the U.S., where it is opening a new facility in Fort Worth, Texas. Interesting. The company plans to hire 500 people for the $90 million plant, but will employ robots and other advanced technologies to keep production costs in line with those in China. Damn. Brooks Running, the athletic footwear maker owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, is moving production from China to Vietnam, largely due to the new tariffs. Whirlpool, the company is moving manufacturing of some of its KitchenAid appliances to the U.S. from China. Intel Corp CEO Bob Swan in June told Bloomberg the company is reviewing its supply chain and whether production can be shifted out of China. So this is it, Dollar. Companies are bailing out, going to Mexico, going to Vietnam, going to Cambodia.
How does I'll stick a pin in this for the geopolitics. How does China feel about Vietnam being the benefiting?
I think that's a consequence of being a neighbor, right? I mean, yeah, politically they have their disagreements, but resource-wise, Vietnam plays a strong role in backfilling a lot of what China can't produce because they just don't have the facility up and going, or because of the cost.
So, do you think that's going to will it have any effect on their relationship? Any negative effect on their relationship?
it will always have a negative effect. Vietnam won't submit or surrender to China no matter what. They've already had a war back in 1979, and China lost that war. So the Vietnamese are very strong, strong-willed. So you know they they're willing to absorb the cost if they have to. And plus, Vietnam is the number one spot in Southeast Asia for investment right now, even better than China. Everybody's going to Vietnam for investment. For investment.
Well, I will stay tuned on the geopolitics show, see if you got that, dive deeper into that. And that's on Wednesdays, right?
Correct. It is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right.
Mhm. But yeah, if Apple's getting out, Apple's the first one to get out. Stanley Black and Decker, all these companies see the writing on the wall. $90 million for a new factory in Fort Worth, Texas. That's a steal for a company like that. And they're probably getting tax benefits to bring all of the manufacturing back. So they're probably not spending any money on these facilities once the tax cuts are gone.
Okay, tell me, how did the company just go from China to Mexico? That's like a whole nother culture, a whole nother language.
Well, it's not so much about you can transition those facilities quite easily because it's a new facility, right? So now you're not adding the same amount of people. I mean, yeah, they're putting 500 people in there, but they also have the robots and cobots. So a lot of that stuff is being put in place to reduce labor in the first place. So in China, they may have had 2,000 people inside of a factory, if not more. Whereas in the United States, they only need 500 because they got the cobots, sorry, the robots and cobots to actually help and assist with the assembly. And they'll probably bring a lot of that labor in from Mexico on a bus for cheap wages, if not use prison labor, because we know that in the United States, prison labor has been used to manufacture electronic components in the past. IBM being one of the companies that has done this.
Wow.
hmm This is serious business, though. Well, this isn't nothing to sneeze at because once this ball gets rolling, once they stop pulling out of China, China's going to retaliate. I mean, we read the article earlier before they said that any company complying with the Trump administration's policies on this in China will face consequences.
Mm.
Hey, what's going on, Lino? Black Uru strikes. Black Uru, if you want to get on the panel, just let us know, and Lionel can send you the link. Um, Black Uru Strike says, is the issue the materials and transportation costs of production in China are getting too high? No, it's the tariffs. It's the tariffs. The production cost hasn't really changed, but the tariffs has been tacked onto the to the end of the production line, and now and now people are going to have a hard time buying it because they don't have the same amount of money. I mean, you banked on goods coming from China because it was going to be cheap and affordable. Now it's not cheap and affordable because of the tariffs. So what's going to be the point of manufacturing it in China? Go ahead, Doggo.
Yeah, no, I'm just just processing all this, man. It's just it's this not going to end. This not going to end pretty. You
hmm
know,
hmm
I just hope that we can keep every all of the fighting at the tariff level and nothing serious, nothing bloody.
hmm Well, probably nothing bloody, but um, you will feel some hemorrhaging financially. Everybody's going to feel it, whether it's China, whether it's the United States or Canada. All of them are going to feel it, and the ones who are going to win are the Africans. They're smack dead in the middle of all of this. A lot of those Huawei phones that can't be shipped to the United States, they're gonna dump all those things right into Africa. And if they have to take a 50% loss, then so be it. But they're not gonna let those things sit on the shelf. You produced all these phones that were supposed to go to the United States, and now they're not they're not U.S. bound anymore because they've been banned. Well, what do you think they have to go?
That's right. That's right.
They're gonna dump all that technology right into Africa.
And then you think some of it will end up on eBay?
Well,
For
I don't know if it'll end up on eBay, but if you're an African and in the cost of a smartphone, let's say you had to spend $1,000 on an iPhone, or you get the same equivalent Huawei phone for, let's say, $100 or $150. You damn right I'm gonna buy the iPhone. The Huawei phone. Yeah, it's not as pretty as the iPhone, but who cares? It does the same exact thing. Same picture quality, same screen quality, same memory, same CPU performance, same fast charging, 4G, 5G capabilities. Why would I turn that down?
you can't.
Jay, yeah, Jay in the chat says, won't that hurt domestic industries in Africa? Africa doesn't have any domestic industries that are going to be competitive with China, and not at the moment. Maybe 10 years from now they will, but not at the moment. Black Ooh Strike says, isn't Trump basically doing what other countries do to protect and grow their domestic production, employment, and markets? To an extent, because it was the United States government that allowed these corporations to shift their manufacturing bases to China in the first place. It wasn't like China came in and put a gun to these guys' heads and the CEOs' heads and said, "Hey, you want to survive in this economy, you better start shifting your manufacturing base to China." They didn't say that. China took advantage of it because that's what the companies were looking to do. They were looking at the profit. They were looking at the bottom line.
Yeah, I don't see I don't see a pain-free way that even if Trump had not imposed these tariffs on, if he had done nothing, we just really would have been kicking the can. We would have ended up with an even greater inventory glut, and on the back end, we would still be trying to push new products down a pipeline that's already flooded with old products. So there was we were either gonna, so what Trump is doing, he's forcing us to take a little bit of the pain right now. In theory, it should be better down the line when we can bring inventory levels back into normal range and gear up for the next production cycle. So.
Yeah, Black Guru, you can get on the panel if you want. There's room on the panel.
Yeah, come on, bro. You can slip me a bottle of Remy Martin VSOP.
All right, let me get to this next article. All right, this one is from Business Insider. Truckers warn of a bloodbath as trucking companies go bankrupt and slash profit expectations. We were supposed to have MOT on the chat on the panel tonight, but he's not here right now. This year has been rocky for the $800 billion trucking industry. After a raucous 2018-2019 has seen retailers and manufacturers moving less according to the COS Freight Index. Dollar will make sure you mark that down. COS Freight Index. Freight rates have dipped year over year for 6 months straight. Loads on the spot market, in which retailers and manufacturers buy trucking capacity as they need it, rather than through a contract, have fallen by a chilling 62.6% in May, year over year. It means rates have dipped for independent truckers as well as major companies. Rates for van loads sank 20% in May, year over year, according to DAT. The earnings of big and small players alike are getting hit as factory activity continues to decline. The Lexington, Kentucky-based owner-operator Chad Boblet said some truck drivers are seeing a bloodbath. I wonder if they know MOT. There have been there has been a spate of trucking companies declaring bankruptcy this year too. The largest was New England Motor Freight, which was number 19 in its trucking segment. Falcon Transport also shut down this year, abruptly laying off some 550 employees in April. We have become increasingly convinced that freight is likely to remain weak through 2019, followed by a fallen truck load and intermodal contract rates in 2020. The UBS analyst Thomas Wadewitz wrote to investors in a June 18th note. Trucking's biggest companies have been slashing their outlooks. Knight Swift and Schneider both cut their annual outlooks earlier this year. Even giants like FedEx, UPS, and JB Hunt, the country's third largest trucking company, haven't been immune. UPS's first quarter bottom line was below last year's revenue, and the package giants' earnings were below expectations. UBS dropped its rating of JB Hunt from buy to neutral on June 18th, citing an environment in which pricing declines and freight remains weak. Bank of America's Merrill Lynch lowered its price objective and cut JB Hunt's rating last month for similar reasons. Bad weather was to blame for some of this year's trucking downturns, and experts have also pointed to increasing uncertainty with tariffs, as President Trump has threatened tariffs of 25% on some $200 billion of goods from China. The data that we've seen in that China, sorry, the data that we've seen is that China in February, not only because of Chinese New Year, but because of the potential tariffs that were supposed to go into go, this is poorly written, sorry, supposed to go into effect March 1st. Goods shipped, I think, is down 20%. Now to see that land into a much lower West Coast volume. FedEx also had to slash its outlook because of its global trade issues. Global trade has slowed in recent months, and leading indicators point to ongoing deceleration in global trade uh, near term. But some insiders are still hesitant to label what's going on as a freight recession, preferring to label the market as soft and opinions as uncertain. As the Credit Suisse analyst Allison Landry told the Wall Street Journal at a conference last month, the common phrases I've heard over and over were, "We're going to wait and see what happens, and I hope we don't talk ourselves into a recession." So, Dollar Will has looked at the charts in the past, for those of you who are new here, and he's been talking about we're long overdue for a market correction. This article is pointing out that a market correction could be premature as these policies go into place.
Well, I would say I just looked at the Dow transports chart for I'm gonna put the link here in the chat for you. But it peaked in September, of last year.
Mhm.
So it's price stock prices are considered a leading indicator. Okay, so money and a lot of those big companies are the stock is owned by insiders
Mhm.
or traded by whales, your big money management companies, your Vanguards, your BlackRock, they control a lot of the trades in your big transportation companies.
Mhm.
So we may not exactly know why they're selling, but as technical traders, we know that they're selling, and that's enough for us. We don't wait for the data to catch up and tell us the story, but the data always catches up and makes all of those suspicious trades, they suddenly make sense when the data catches up. But if you wait for the data to catch up, the price could have fallen too fast. Back in my fundamental trading days, I used to watch the transportation sector, um, of course, trucking, airlines.
Mhm.
FedEx has an earnings report coming out real soon, and everybody keys on them, because lots of stuff is sent by air freight shipping, ocean freight liners. I used to follow all of that. I used to follow, of course, oil, because all of those transportation vehicles, um, when they're busiest, they're using a lot of oil, a lot of energy, a fuel of some oil-based fuel. So that shows up in the oil chart. So it's like it's all connected. And then the another one I need to look at this year is uh, like Weyerhaeuser and International Paper. I used to track uh, cardboard boxes.
Mhm.
What doesn't come to you in a cardboard box?
Mhm.
So when they tell you that their sales are down, their revenue is down, and you go, okay, something's going on. They're
Mhm.
selling fewer cardboard boxes. Okay, that's enough for me. So we'll keep you posted on that when they come out with their earnings.
When I used to work for HP, I remember back some time ago they were shipping boxes to us that were like very lightly shaded colors. We were trying to figure out what was going on. They were trying to determine the cost of cardboard, of a cardboard box for a computer, how much it would cost um, to ship with a computer.
Yeah, the
Because
recycled paper
you know,
experiments.
well, yeah, yeah, some of the colors and stuff. I didn't realize that, because when they were sending these boxes, they had all these graphics on it and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden, they just started showing up blank, and then they started showing up, these, sort of random off colors, very flat and bland colors.
So what do you think was behind the Crayola experiment?
I think they figured out a cost balance.
Yeah, I bet you they were using all kinds of recyclables, and they said, okay, let's dye it some strange colors to
Hmm.
make it look uniform. Let's not make it look like we're using cheap boxes to send out this expensive product.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right, let me look at the chat. Jim Denson says, "Do you think there is the skill level already there in Africa to produce cell phones or quality tech, and where?" East Africa would be the region for manufacturing because they have access to lots of water, plus they have a lot of civility politically. They don't have the same issues that DRC has, or um, many of the West African countries, such as Al Shabaab, not Al Shabaab, Al Qaeda of West Africa, basically what they call themselves now. ISIS of West Africa, sorry. So they don't have all those terrorist issues and instability issues. So Tanzania, Ethiopia, Egypt, although they're in the north, um, they would be the chosen places and regions to actually put a manufacturing facility for manufacturing goods. Plus, they're close to the water, so water ports, port access to ports is very important because one, they can manufacture it and ship straight up to Europe in a matter of hours, or they can shift to the south and actually ship to the United States in just a matter of days. It wouldn't cost them that much time. travel time. So they're in a rightful position in terms of you know natural resources to produce, and plus a lot of the natural resources actually come out of the Central African region anyway. So if they needed to tap the ground and get all those resources, it would just be a truck ride away, just a few hours into another country, and then dump all that stuff and process it right in East Africa, and actually get some things popping. That's they're in the right position. So um, yeah, Black Guru Strike says he's in the bookstore. You know, good and damn well ain't no bookstores in Chicago.
Send all replies to Mike V.
No, I'm just kidding, man. Black Guru Strike's is good, brother. Um, what's going on, Gabe? All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this one is from Disrupt Africa. Startup Nigeria 2019 is here. Oh wait, that's not the article. Yeah, it is. Accelerating investment firm Ventures platform has launched Startup Nigeria 2019, a 3-month incubation program designed to provide entrepreneurs with training, mentoring, and funding. First launched by Ventures platform last year with a focus on agriculture, Startup Nigeria aims to solve Nigeria's youth unemployment problem by equipping young people to create successful startups. This year's program, for which applications close on Monday, June 17th, is open to individuals from the North Central, Southeast, and Northwest regions and focuses on multiple sectors of the economy. Ventures platform will provide mentorship to 440 startups and funding of up to NGN2 Nigerian into million, which is $5,500 US, to 110. Interesting. Yeah, this is interesting. I wish we had something like that here in the most predominantly black neighborhoods.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We need to return to that. It used to be the norm,
Mm,
but hopefully tough times will force us to push businesses to assume more responsibility for training. We don't do on the job training anymore.
mhm.
People are expected to walk in the door fully qualified, and we produce a generation of people that think that that's the way it's always been. You know, America didn't rise to this its position as a power without taking on the job training seriously. And I don't think we're ever going to get restore our place until we can break this connection between resources and training. You have to be rich in order to get education, or training. Um, we have to break that.
Mhm.
It's not competitive on a global scale. It does not it handicaps us from competing.
All right, this next one is from Bloomberg.com. Africa's fastest growing region banks on more spending for growth. Oh man. Actually, give me a second. Let me see if I can. try this in incognito. All right, I got it. All right. All right. So try this again. East African countries plan to increase spending dramatically on infrastructure projects and budgets to be released Thursday. It's not clear they can afford it. Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi will unveil plans to fund the building of more roads, railways, and power plants, as well as expand services such as healthcare and education for the yearly starting July 1st. In most cases, this will raise budget gaps as a percentage of gross domestic product, or GDP, and increase following requirements. This is just a chart of how much is going to be spent from an expenditure standpoint per country. There is a risk of rising fiscal deficits coming from the fact that many have ambitious revenue targets they may fail to meet, said Tony Watima, a Nairobi-based independent economist. Spending will probably climb about 10% in Kenya in the next fiscal year, 17% in Uganda, and 11% in Rwanda. While it will be broadly flat in Tanzania, the nation's respective governments have set in forecasts. While the government's forecast that revenue will increase by double digits next year, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania all have plans to approach the debt market to help raise funds to finance their deficits. In Kenya's case, the nation will borrow about 607 billion shillings, or $6 billion US, locally and internationally in 2019-2020, according to Treasury Secretary Henry Rotich. GDP in East Africa will probably expand 5.9% in 2019 and 6.1% in 2020, according to the African Development Bank, making it the fastest growing region on the continent. Economic expansion in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi will average a combined 5.5% for the next 2 to 3 years, Citigroup Incorporation. Chief economist for Africa, David Cowan, said Wednesday. Infrastructure boost. Kenya is implementing its so-called Big Four agenda, which will see the region's largest economies hand over no less than 500,000 houses to first-time homeowners by June 2022, and develop more manufacturing, food production, and healthcare to create jobs in a nation where unemployment is a sticking electoral issue. The projects will cost 405 billion shillings, or $4 billion US, in the coming year, budget estimates show. If approved by lawmakers, about 7.5% of Tanzania's 33.1 trillion shilling, $14 billion budget will go toward building a standard gauge railway line that will link East African nation's commercial city of Dar es Salaam with the town of Mwanza along Lake Victoria through the capital, Dodoma. The country is due this month to start building the 2,115 megawatt Rufiji hydropower project. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) in April said that Tanzania's economy is being harmed by unpredictable and interventionist policies of President John uh, Magufuli's government. It said this in a report whose release the East African country has blocked. So basically, we talked about this earlier, that East Africa is the right place for investment in terms of manufacturing. I talked about this before. It was asked in the chat. Um, would Africa be right? From a manufacturing perspective and a technology perspective, they actually are. They have a strong base of people, especially millennials who are technologically savvy, who can write code, who can turn a wrench, and have innovative ideas. And then you combine that with a growing market, a rapidly growing market. Years ago, they were only, I think during the Obama administration, they were less than 2% on GDP. Now they're talking about 5.5 and close to 6.1% by next year. This is a big shift that hasn't been seen in quite some time.
Yeah, but I don't know. We'll see if those numbers hold up, because if we're talking about a global economic slowdown,
Mm-hmm.
that those numbers, I'm wondering if they're pie in the sky, if they're based on the expectation that current or recently good strong growth trends continue, and no one who really thinks that current growth levels will be able to be sustained. So we'll see if we go through this slowdown as things really hit the fan, like we're talking about in the previous articles. That's going to have some effect on investment in Africa. Investment in Africa is not going to be as high on the priority list as we project right now, while times are good. But when these major developed economies of China, America, as we start to have our own economic issues, that's going to affect or cause some change in the priorities. So we'll see.
All right, let me get to this next one. All right, this one is from the Epoch Times. U.S. can help Africa escape China's debt trap, former Mr. Africa says. China is rapidly gaining political and economic influence in Africa, though through its debt trap diplomacy. And to counter the Beijing's regime's regional hegemony, the United States must change its approach to the continent, an African business consultant and political activist said. China will soon be controlling Africa, and when the United States turns its attention to the continent, it will be too late, warned Akol Nayok Akol Dok, a South Sudanese business consultant and an activist who raises awareness about China's neo-colonial One Belt, One Road initiative. Dok was Mr. Africa International in 2016. Through One Belt, One Road, China is pouring billions of dollars into Africa to support the infrastructure development of the African states. Many of these projects, however, are financed by loans with opaque terms provided by China's state-controlled lenders. In recent years, the initiative has been critiqued as debt trap diplomacy, raising the risk of economic distress in borrowing countries and putting their sovereignty at risk. The countries that are trapped in China and China's explosive loans end up losing control of their assets. The South Asian country of Sri Lanka is a prominent example where the country handed over its Hambantota port to Chinese companies in 2017 for a 99-year lease when it failed to repay its $8 billion debt. And African states are likely to do the same. There are reports that China has seized a number of assets in Zambia, including ZESCO, the national power utility. However, Zambia has denied such claims. According to Doak, African countries face difficulties in financing their infrastructure projects. They can't get enough funds from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank or Western nations. Chinese Chinese come in and give them loan options with no strings attached. But as these countries struggle to pay off these loans, the Chinese begin to seize assets and begin to take over various industries, he said. The top three African countries with the largest amount of Chinese loans are Angola, Ethiopia, Kenya, and they are all in debt distress. In addition, many infrastructure projects benefit Chinese contractors rather than local businessmen or businesses. Nearly 89% of the One Belt, One Road contractors are Chinese companies, according to the World Economic Forum. And these projects rely heavily on Chinese labor rather than the local workforce, which causes resentment in host countries. Beijing's influence in South Sudan is also growing. China is the biggest investor in the country's oil industry. Many people in South Sudan have a positive opinion of the United States and the West, but they feel as if sometimes the West and the United States are working against them and looking down on them, Doak said. And that's a narrative that China plays on, he said, adding that the Chinese have benefited from Africans' bad memories of Western domination and colonialism. According to Doak, China and the United States diverge in their approach to Africa. The Chinese regime, for example, doesn't press African states for promoting certain Western values such as democracy and human rights, while Doak thinks the Western strategy is more paternalistic, focusing more on internal political system and telling Africans what to do. He says the current U.S. sanctions on South Sudan have kept local companies from buying American technology and equipment. Amer- According to Doak, the United States has to change its foreign policy towards African states and become partners with them to counter China's hegemony. When you develop an economy, then you can promote a better political system because most issues in Africa evolve from poverty, and poverty is an economic issue. A landlocked country in East Central Africa, South Sudan is poverty stricken despite having the third largest oil reserves in Africa. The country gained its independence from Sudan in 2011. Its population of 12 million is among the youngest in the world, with with about 74% below the age of 30. Its vast natural resources and young population make South Sudan an ideal location for business venture, Dork said. Since the 1990s, China has been a dominant player in the oil and gas industry of South Sudan. Chinese companies own nearly 47% of Dar Petroleum, which is the only consortium producing oil at significant volumes in the African state. Chinese companies also hold majority of the service contracts in the nation's oil fields. To fund the new infrastructure projects, the South Sudan government recently agreed to supply 30,000 barrels per day of crude oil to Export-Import Bank of China. The country currently produces 170,000 barrels per day. While people do see the looming threat of China, many of them are still oblivious to it, Doc said, as they want roads, schools, and hospitals. The Chinese are building a hospital in Juba right now, one of the first hospitals in the capital city. So people are looking more to the product than the policy threat. In March, China's state-run media Xinhua announced that the China Civil Engineering Construction Corp would build at least 26 hospitals across South Sudan. The country received $33 million grant from the Chinese regime in 2013 to renovate and expand health facilities throughout the country. However, the infrastructure projects don't benefit the local contractors or workers, said Dok, who added that it isn't in China's interest to train the local workforce and lift them out of poverty. When the Chinese control the technology, when when they control the resources, it's hard to get some locals involved, Doc said. They don't want the local people to be independent because if they are independent, they won't be able to bring the Chinese. So, can the United States help China get out of help Africa get out of China's debt trap? Sorry. Um, this is interesting. I believe, Black Gnostics, he had talked about this in the past, that this was long talked about. What the United States should have done is they should have sent black people of America, ADOS, into Africa to do business on behalf of the United States and actually uh, um, stop China in its tracks. And I believe the initial perspective was AGOA, which is African Growth and Opportunity Act, that was enacted in 2001 or 2002, and allows for free trade to come from Africa into the United States, no tariffs at all. For whatever reason, there was no real investment into this whole entire initiative, which led China into walking in and doing what they do from a one belt one road perspective. You can point the fingers at who may be to blame for this, but at the end of the day, neither Obama or Trump has looked at Africa as a potential partner from a business perspective, which allowed the Chinese to come in there and woo, melanated people away. It's not really that hard to figure out.
Right. And what choice did Africa have? But to accept a lot of these bad deals, as opposed to what?
Yeah.
Accept the deal as opposed to what? The world has their foot on Africa's neck.
Hmm.
And so, like you said, it doesn't take a lot, foresight to see down the road from here. The exploitation is still going to be there. They're gonna be talking about discrimination and things that we've talked about for last 50 or more than 50 years. Fighting for equality, the human rights and equality. Economic fairness as a human right. It's going to replay uh, I guess the script that we've lived here in this developed country. So as Africa makes its way to become more, I guess, developed by what we would call first world standard, they're
Hmm.
going to walk up the same road that a lot of Black Americans have walked up in relationship to others. Okay.
Hmm.
The exploitation is there. It's going to be there, and that's why you gotta that cultural part is important. Along with getting skilled, education, and all that. You need the cultural part. You need the political part. The battle is on many fronts, all at the same time. So that's why I don't get into that debate that what's her name, Yvette Carnell and Tone, that we should not be entrepreneurial. It's political. It's both. It's a political struggle. It's a cultural struggle, and it's an economic struggle. It's an education and skill struggle. It's all of the above. And we have to be able to do all of the above all at the same time across and sustain it across multiple generations.
Hmm.
And that's it's like with all this infusion of money coming into Africa, it's instead of doing it, solving it, growing at a sustained rate uh, uniformly across the continent or the various countries across multiple generations. I mean, that's like a level of planning and cooperation that we haven't been able to do.
Hmm.
So now, so that brings us to now where there's this money coming from all directions. But of course, these are not no strings attached relationships. Okay, there's no free money. There's no charity. You know, there's no free dates. All right, we talk about that in the manosphere. Everything comes with a price. But what they can't afford? Not Africa can't afford. I don't think to not take advantage of this opportunity, and these opportunities. Let me put it that way. And while the going is good, while the money is there, before this global slowdown happens, they need to get all they can get before those priorities change.
Mm-hmm.
When the global slowdown really hits full tilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ghost in the chat says that we need more lessons on economics. No, you need more black brain trust in your life. Let me get to this next article. All right. This one is from Yahoo Finance. 4 U.S. states join lawsuit to stop T-Mobile Sprint deal. 4 more U.S. states joined an unusual effort by state attorneys general to stop T-Mobile U.S. Inc. Incorporated acquisition of Sprint Corporation, a New York official said at court hearing on Friday. Hawaii, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Nevada will be included in an amended complaint filed Friday, said Bo Buffer, chief of the Antitrust Bureau in the New York Attorney General's office. Lawyers for the states and the companies are also proposed October 7th for the start of a trial, which could last at least 2 to 3 weeks. Sprint was down 5.9% around midday on Friday, while T-Mobile had slipped 2.3%. The 4 states joined 10 state attorney generals. This is so poorly written. Led by New York and California, including the District of Columbia. They filed a lawsuit on June 11th aimed at stopping the purchase by number 3 U.S. wireless operator T-Mobile of number 4 Sprint, saying the deal would cost their subscribers more than $4.5 billion annually. The attorneys general from all of the states involved are Democrats. If the acquisition is completed, the number of U.S. wireless carriers would drop to 3 from 4, with Verizon Communication and AT&T Inc. leading the pack. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, has indicated it is prepared to approve the transaction, and the Justice Department is expected to weigh in soon. U.S. District Judge Victor Marrero signaled the case could be affected by the U.S. Department of Justice, which is not involved in the lawsuit, it decides to intervene. The elephant not in the room is the Justice Department, Marrero said, referring to his courtroom. Either way, it is likely to affect what is on the table. Marrero also noted a possible inconsistency in the state's complaint. He said they maintain that aggressive competition among the 4 national wireless carriers have resulted in falling prices, only to then say the company's ability to signal each other on rates has led to higher prices for consumers. This has been talked about for quite some time. Just at least 5 years now, they've been talking about this sort of merger and acquisition of the two carriers. They're both failing carriers for the most part, but they're on 2 different spectrums of the market. So Sprint uses GSM and T-Mobile uses Sprint uses CDMA and T-Mobile uses GSM. So they're not on the same network, so they don't offer the same products. Their products are vastly different, but they both cell phone companies. So I say all that to say this, that something good may come from this, from the two companies merging. It's not like it's not as if if they merge, you somehow suddenly lose out. They haven't proven that there's some kind of sudden loss by them merging.
Right. And I think it's the right time in the business cycle for them to merge. You know, um, you're going to see. I said a year ago that when we get to the top, of this business cycle, you're going to see more mergers. You're going to see a flurry of IPOs to get that money while it's there. Um, those companies are going to come together. Workers are going to get laid off. The pie in the economy is getting smaller. So I can't see that the government would stand in the way of this. If not that there aren't valid concerns of an entity getting too big and having a monopoly. I don't see that happening in the cell phone industry right now. But let's say even if people are concerned about that, this is the wrong time to fight that battle. What's likely to happen is they're gonna let this go through, and there'll probably be some other mergers along the way. But whenever this downturn is over
Mm-hmm.
and we're cranking up the engine again to go in full production mode, in our great economy again, then those antitrust concerns, those not enough competition, monopoly types of arguments, that'll be the fertile ground, the perfect time to make those kinds of arguments. But I don't see that the government will step in and stop mergers from happening and layoffs, basically,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to happen. It's like, okay, if you don't let the merger happen and one company just goes out of business because they're not making enough profit now, so what was solved? It gets into be semantics at a certain point. You got two companies that are smart enough to realize that, hey, this pie's not big enough. Let's go on and let's merge right now so that at least we can make some decisions about how we want to be affected. Whereas if we both try to fight and stay alive, we both gonna have a whole lot of injuries. So in the end of the day, you're not gonna have two companies standing, going through tough times. It's
So
just
would you?
it's just a question of how you get there. It's like you can have companies agree to merge and do layoffs or reorganizations or all those words that they say that kind of mean the same thing, or you can force them to stay apart for competitive reasons and one of them just goes bankrupt.
So what you're saying, Dollar Will, is that you feel that the mergers, they'll encourage mergers to keep the economy up. Is what you're effectively saying. Is that correct?
I don't know if it will keep the economy up. I'm saying that they'll let it go because I think you look at it, you go, it's one way or the other, either via merger or via bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
The people eating the pie is going to come down. The number of companies and has to come down because the economy's slowing down. The pie is just not going to be big enough to sustain all these companies, and you see it happening in many industries, like the mergers. You're going to see it pick up.
No,
What were the job numbers for this past month? Or do you know what those were looking like?
we
No.
haven't gotten to that yet. We haven't gotten to that yet. But what Dollar was saying is has some validity to it.
I agree with him.
No,
Yeah,
I'm just talking abstractly. I don't know any of their numbers. I'm just saying I was harkening back to something I said a year ago, saying back then that when we get to the you'll know that when we get near the end to this business cycle, is you start to see mergers because these companies, they're smart. They are really good with their data. They know what those future earnings are going to be, and
Yeah,
they're smart.
the Trump
Yeah, yeah.
the Trump administration is telling all companies in the United States, go. If there's going to be an acquisition, if there's going to
Yeah.
be a merger, go. Do it now while he's in office, because he's right. He's basically giving tax incentives for them to actually merge and to make acquisitions at this point. And these companies are saying we need to do it right now, because if he doesn't survive 2020, we will never get this done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, you're totally right. That's why I was listening to what Dollar Wilson. I was actually thinking that the mergers game would actually help to keep the economy up as well. I thought that was the point you were making, of which I would
Mhm.
fully agree with as well. So I thought those were fairly decent points, from an economic perspective.
Mhm.
Anyway, go ahead.
All right, let me get to this next article real quick, and then we'll get into reparations. All right, this next one is from Yahoo Finance again. Fred stores closing in 2019, 49 additional locations to shut down. Fred's says that it will be shutting down an additional 49 stores this year. This is due to its readjusting its store footprint. However, this chain does not note that pharmacies will continue operations even after these stores close their doors. The following are the new locations for Fred's store closings 2019 list: Louisville, Lexington, Georgia, Rolling Fork, Missouri, Soperton, Georgia. There's quite a few. These are all. This is a southern chain.
Okay, what is Fred's?
I assume that it's some kind of holistic pharmacy or something to that effect.
Yeah, it just looks like it's a lot of clothing, and I'm like, wow, that's a pretty big chain for me to have never heard of it. America's a big town.
Hmm. Grand opening, grand closing.
That's right. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
get used to that. We're gonna have some awesome. You're gonna find some awesome stuff in the cutout bin, man.
Hmm.
You know, when we taking trips to what do you call those outlet stores? We having bus trips to outlet stores. So that's what we got to look forward to.
All right. This last one is from Vox.com. America is having an unprecedented debate about reparations. What comes next? Recent months have touched off a renewed debate about what exactly is owed to the descendants of enslaved men and women after centuries of bondage and legalized discrimination. On Wednesday morning, that debate entered the halls of Congress as a small panel of academics, activists, and journalists, many of them descendants of enslaved men and women, testified during a hearing on reparations. The hearing, conducted by the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties, held both historical and symbolic significance. The last congressional discussion of reparations was in 2007, 1 year before the election of the country's first black president. The most recent hearing was held on Juneteenth, a day commemorating when slaves in Galveston, Texas, were finally notified of their emancipation. As an increasing number of people arrived to witness the hearing, enough that they filled three overflow rooms, according to the New York Times. They stood a short distance away from the U.S. Capitol, a federal symbol built by the enslaved. The bill discussed H.R. 40 would task a commission with studying the continued effects of slavery and racial discrimination and make recommendations about what redress might be needed. This will this bill will this bill is also laden with symbolism, being named after the unfilled 154-year-old federal promise of 40 acres and a mule to recently freed men and women. The bill has languished in the House for decades. first introduced by former Congressman John Conyers in 1989 and reintroduced every year until his retirement in 2017. The bill has since been reintroduced by Texas Democrat Sheila Jackson Lee. I just simply asked, why not? Lee said at the beginning of the hearing, and why not now? It is impossible that 2019, which has ushered in a new wave of national attention to reparations, could bring the beginnings of an answer to that question. In recent months, at least 11 presidential candidates have thrown their support behind studying reparations, noting that the federal government greatly benefited from slavery and then allowed policy to entrench equity over generations. Academics who have studied the historical and economic case for reparations have seen renewed interest in their research and increased attention to the rhetoric and behaviors of white supremacists have fueled calls for politicians to do more to address acts of racism. The Wednesday hearing, which included testimony from panel speakers including Senator Cory Booker, writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, actor and activist Danny Glover, and economist Julian Marveau, gave a platform to those who believe that reparations are crucial for Black communities that have gone too long without repair. The hearing also called attention to the fact that opposition to reparations remains strong, with some speakers and several Republican members of the committee arguing that to provide anything now would be simply granting an unjustified handout. It shows that while the fight for reparations has undoubtedly advanced in the more than 150 years since it began, things are far from settled. And even as historic hearing marks the first step towards possible congressional action on the issue, one question that remains is what effect, if any, Wednesday's hearing will have on the ongoing national discourse around reparations. The demand for reparations stretches back more than a century and was first raised in the months and years immediately following the end of the Civil War. In the decades since, calls for restitution for the descendants of the enslaved have been supported by activists, civil rights groups, and academics who point out the vast list of racial disparities, including the racial wealth gap, which shows the median white household is 10 times wealthier than the median Black one. But their steady call for reparations has never been met. Enslavement reigned for 250 years on these shores. When it ended, the country could have extended its hollow principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to all. Coates, whose 2014 essay, The Case for Reparations, called newfound mainstream attention to the ways slavery and subsequent century of unjust policy impacted Black people, said on Wednesday. But America had other things in mind. The argument that the effect of slavery and discrimination continue to have impact was further made by Glover, who shared the story of meeting his great-grandmother, Mary Brown, a woman born into slavery. White America must recognize that justice for Black people cannot be achieved without radical change to the structure of society, he said, adding that reparations is a moral, democratic, and economic imperative. Several of the speakers, including Katrina Brown, a white filmmaker whose ancestors brought more than 12,000 African men and women to the U.S. in chains, and Reverend Eugene Taylor Sutton, an Episcopal bishop for I can't even pronounce it right now. Diocese of
Episcopal bishop for the Diocese of Maryland.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having some time right now. Having some issues right now.
Noted that for the archdiocese.
Yeah. Noted that there was a moral need for the United States to pursue reparations. But as these hearings continued, Marveau, the economist, also said she was frustrated with the Congress members' limited interest in understanding the economic weight of slavery and discrimination. She pointed to the severe impact slavery had on the ability to build Black wealth, noting that the failure of Reconstruction, the intentional destruction of economic hubs like Tulsa's Black Wall Street, and the exclusion of Black people from federal programs like the GI Bill are closely tied to present day issues like the use of cash bail that have entrenched economic disparities further. When zip code determines what kind of school that you go to, when zip code determines what kind of food you eat, these are the vestiges of enslavement that a lot of people don't want to deal with. She said. She added that the current wealth gap between Black and white households is almost as wide as it was in 1910. While the majority of speakers at the hearing were in support of reparations, others were opposed to the topic. These speakers said they acknowledged the harms of slavery that distinguish between that and the current issues, saying that the time for reparations has passed and claiming that reparations would be an insult to many African Americans. Reparations, by definition, are only given to victims, argued Coleman Hughes, a Columbia undergraduate and Quillette columnist. So the moment you gave me reparations, you've made me a victim without my consent. Another speaker, retired NFL player Burgess Owens, joined Hughes in arguing that reparations would be insulting diminishment of the work done by African Americans in slavery. Their comments, which elicited boos from the audience and disapproval from the panelists, were endorsed by many Republican lawmakers on the House subcommittee. Throughout the hearing, these lawmakers suggested reparations would be unfair payment forced on those who had nothing to do with slavery. Putting aside the injustice of monetary reparations from current taxpayers for the sins of a small subset of Americans from many generations ago, the fair distribution of reparations would be nearly impossible once one considers the complexity of the American struggle to abolish slavery, argued Louisiana Rep. Mike Johnson, the committee's ranking member. Other committee members claimed that reparations should only be paid by Democrats. It was a political twist on a claim that reparations are something taken from white Americans and handed over to African Americans. That several speakers said was misguided. Rather than demanding something from white America, speakers supporting reparations said they were demanding something from America as a whole and the federal government in particular, a recognition of the enduring damages of enslavement and government-sanctioned discrimination, and a concerted effort from the federal government to provide repair to a community that has been reportedly denied a chance to accumulate wealth and fully participate in a country that gained its riches and power through the coerced labor of the enslaved. Some Republican lawmakers already have an intense opposition to H.R. 40, a bill that merely calls for a study for studying reparations and does not include any actual demand for reparations or create a reparations program. One day before the congressional hearing, Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said he was against H.R. 40 and that America has already provided redress for injustices of slavery and Jim Crow through civil rights legislation and Civil War. These comments led to a sharp rebuke from Coates. While emancipation deadbolted the door against the bandits of America, Jim Crow wedged the windows wide open, he said. And that is the thing about Senator McConnell's something. It was 150 years ago. It was right now. Coates' argument is a claim that has been supported by research into reparations, with experts like Duke University's William Darity arguing that issues like the racial wealth gap are closely linked to slavery and longstanding structural racism, adding that a seriously funded reparations program may be the only way to seriously narrow these gaps. So I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's not really necessary. Dollar will.
Yes. um, man, we need therapy. The whole country needs therapy. For those black folks to say to receive reparations is an insult to the accomplishments of black folks since slavery.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. Okay, if you don't need a benefit that reparations provides, then for that individual, it's like they're taking a group solution and responding to it as an individual. That's insane. You can't have it's a group issue. If that now by definition, it's not going to speak to every individual. Okay, Oprah don't need reparations. Okay, but somebody else, but large numbers of it requires not thinking like an individual, not thinking of yourself. It requires thinking of the group and the state of Black America. And if you waver from that, then you're going to come up with idiotic, points of view. What is the health status of Blacks in America? We're not doing too good. Now, so many of those remedies that people would put forward probably wouldn't apply to a Burgess Owens, a former Washington franchise player from the 70s. Somebody, he's I think he's a pretty wealthy businessman also. If you're a millionaire, it's really nothing it's going to do for you outside of unless you're like, say you're a small business, and small can be kind of big. You can be a multi-millionaire corporation and still be a small business. If the reparations helps you into a more competitive situation to become a Fortune 500 company, then sure, it can help you. If a Robert L. Smith can recognize structural racism and he's a daggone billionaire, who could it not help? There's always another level. There's always another level higher to go. The small business man might have been a Fortune 500 company if not for the legacy of structural racism. And as for the whites, they need therapy. We need to fix this daggone educational system which does not teach the advantages that whites received that came strictly from disparity in the law. And just as we all pay our taxes to pay debts and obligations of America, well, this would be one of them. This would be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's no way you can BGS talked in one of his recent postings about the contract, the method how Black folks were misled into thinking that they had a mortgage, but they didn't. We had a good number of us lost land through one swindle or another. I mean, America, Black and white, needs an education in the school system and in all of media, just repeatedly a barrage of the ways in which governments, state and federal, had racist practices woven into the law. So we don't even have to get down to why does this white person have to pay and they didn't discriminate against anybody. It could just be a charge against the federal government and state government. And as a citizen of this country and of those states, you have to pay.
Well, that's what it should be.
So, but why do people keep reducing it down to a level of, well, I never discriminated against no Black person. First of all, we don't, it could be your grandparents, even if it was not your grandparents. It's let's say all these white folks you say that nobody in their family discriminated against anybody. Let's just assume that they're telling the truth, and we know that's not possible.
But these current people benefit from that. Anyway,
Exactly. So
Yeah, they
let's just
benefit from it.
assume that they're telling the truth. Let's assume that when they clean out their attics, they don't find Klan robes and all kinds of things that they don't talk about. Let's just assume all of that, and nobody discriminating on their side. It's still a debt that can't be disputed, that the government had a dual system and they dehumanized non-whites basically.
It's a false argument. It's a false argument that we cannot entertain when a white person says, well, I didn't do anything, or that has nothing to do with them, because slavery was state sponsored. It's actually beyond quote unquote white people. It's beyond them. It was state sponsored. This is an issue that has to seek redress with the government.
Yeah, it's
not
beyond
white people. It's beyond
the
them.
individual. You're right. It's beyond just some white individual saying I didn't do that. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a state-sponsored business, a very profitable one as well. So that's the big issue. And what we're looking for is the redress to economic reparations, to where we were basically denied certain guarantees. We were guaranteed 40 acres and a mule. That's written. That's in writing. We were guaranteed that. Didn't get it. So what Ulysses is talking about is dead on the fucking money.
The problem is it's a bait and switch. It's a bait and switch type of argument, man. The thing about it is it's a distraction. It's a distraction argument. It gets you off the course of actually going at the true entity that was responsible for it. As soon as you start engaging individual white folks and them saying, well, I didn't do any. It's not about you. Right. And the thing about it is that if I go and seek any redress over this shit, it has no impact or effect on you. I'm going after the government. I'm not going after you.
That's right. And you have to look at it now. There were incidents with Rosewood and Tulsa and so forth where reparations were paid. There have been reparations paid to Black people for various events that happened in the past. They were paid. We did get some reparations from certain incidences that happened to Black people in the past. There were other incidents that went on where reparations were not paid, where land was robbed and taken, where people were killed and removed off the lands, and those lands have passed into white hands, and deeds and everything else like that were cut from Black people and given to white people, and all this kind of craziness. And some of that has not been redressed. A lot of that hasn't been redressed.
I was just talking with my dad earlier, man. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we have had reparations paid in the past. What the issue is whites do not. I mean, the collective white, and there are many white people and corporations and so forth that are still in business to this very day that made many hundreds of millions, which would be considered billions, close to trillions today, and in today's dollars, off of slavery. They are still in existence to this very day. The government benefited immensely from it as well. And, that redress has not been, such a large issue that was never redressed. And remember, the reparations argument, this is nothing new. This went back right after slavery. This is an argument. This is a debate that's over 150 years old. All right, because people were, we didn't get to redress the 40 acres and a mule. We didn't get that. So, a lot of people now are sitting here saying we are still owed that, of which technically from a contractual standpoint, we are.
We are.
So I don't see why people look at this as something strange. I know what Black people are fearful. They're afraid. Many of us are pusillanimous and cannot sit back and want to face, what this is, say, just walk off and just leave it alone. When others who had serious issues happen to them in the past, we can talk about Jews, we can talk about Indians and so forth, who did get reparations.
Well, Carl, let me ask you something.
So when we sit back and we don't do that, these are people who are afraid. They're fearful. And I would go deeper into some areas, but I'll just leave that.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Go ahead,
did you hear these same type of arguments coming from white folks when Jews were paid reparations? Well, I didn't do anything. They got paid, didn't they?
I heard some people say that. The Jews said, never again. You're gonna give something up.
What about the Japanese? What about the Japanese?
And they politically mobilized. There are people who did not want Japanese to have reparations. They said they were the enemy that were here.
But they got it, right?
They did. Manzanar and all that. We proved that there were enemies in that camp. People talked all this bullshit, but
right.
They still got
their shit.
They still got their reparations. So were there people in there trying to stop them from getting it? Yes, they were.
They still got it, didn't they?
But they got it politically. They mobilized. They were able to get it. They got it. They're telling you since we're the omegas of the society, well, we fuck you over and you're not getting it. In fact, when we bought in the grandfather clause, we actually took your 40 acres and a mule and waited for Swedes from Sweden and Iceland, these other places where they were fucking ice monkeys for all practical purposes, came floating on over here, and we gave them that land.
Right.
We gave them your 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah, I was talking with my dad earlier, man.
So states that we founded, like Minnesota, black man founded that motherfucker. Okay, a Quaker. Okay, and then was denied that. Whites were then settled in there, and they were given everything. Yeah. So if you people really understood the history on this, there's no argument. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a very legitimate concern with us, and we have to talk about how this will be done. The shines that are sitting back here saying you don't deserve it, I consider them shines, and they should be tasked as such.
Go ahead, Ulysses.
I was talking with my dad earlier today, man, and because he had it on CNN and there's a little piece on reparations and all that, and my dad gets to talking to me, and I know about like a lot of our family history, especially I'm a first generation Californian, right? My dad was born in Texas, but all of his family, they originate from Louisiana, and so like my great grandparents, man, we owned 800 acres. I'm gonna say that again, dude. We owned 800 fucking acres, right, in Louisiana. We was growing every goddamn thing, raising all types of animals and shit, okay? And all it took, because at the time, there were still Confederalist leanings, okay? So it was a quote-unquote tax issue, which led to the seizure of that land. And according to my dad, that shit's still just sitting there today. But we don't have it. See, somebody else got it. See, so it wasn't even about like, okay, well, it's going to be taken and given to someone else for it to be utilized, right? How we were using it. No, it was just that y'all ain't going to have it. See, so I got a serious fucking problem with a lot of this type of shit. I want my shit back.
Right. And even in the midst of that reality you're talking about, that's why the first thing I said out of my mouth is we need some therapy. We got even black folks now saying that there's no discrimination even today or even in the past.
They're afraid.
We have to come to terms with the fact that we were in a war, okay, and we were what happened to us was deliberate, and it's like a lot of us just psychologically can't accept that. And I think even white folks psychologically can't accept that. And so we also, I think black folks have to come to accept that a lot of whites don't want equal competition. You don't need to keep arguing to white folks that you're brilliant. They know that you are. They know what you had to endure. They work around you every day. They know that you're not welcome there, and they see you perform despite all of it. Now you ask that white person, how would their life be impacted if you got equality? They know what's going to happen. And so, I recall a situation that my job, I don't want to name the place or the person, but if I said this woman's name, she's a internationally known feminist, of the high order. And she stood up at the job and said, I understand that equality means that I would have to give up some of my excess in the interest of some other people getting equality. And she said, I've grown to like what I have, and I don't want to give it up. And I went over and I shook her hand. I said, thank you very much for your honesty. I'm glad you said this in front of, this room full of black folks. I'm not surprised by that comment, but black folks are. And even though I was in that room with a
Will,
whole
what
lot
does she have to give up though? Will, what does
Yeah, that's my
she have to give up? What does she have to give up?
equality. I mean, every white privilege that she has. If she likes her privilege, she does not want to give it up.
So you're saying that reparations gets rid of their white privilege? Is what you're saying?
If reparations raise the economic status of black people, what would white mean?
But
what is she losing? What is she losing?
What is she losing? And what does it have to do? What does it have to do with giving up anything? You see, that's the whole thing. They're not giving up anything.
They ain't giving up shit.
The bottom line, we're not taking from them to give from anything. The bottom line is that we're just getting what was owed.
Yeah, I
okay.
understand that. But
Okay. This is a fear. This is once again, their cultural game. That they want to have their overlay and sit down and say, no, you shouldn't have what was taken from you.
Yeah,
that's all. That's all she said.
Let me finish my point.
Okay, so
I heard your point of view. That's my point of view. Is that this is deliberate, and we have a hierarchical society, and the people at the top of it want to maintain it, and to have and the concept of equality is anti-hierarchical. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get I want black folks to understand. These people worked hard to create stratification within a society. And you come along talking about equality, that's the opposite of stratification. Okay, in my notification today, I got I have a Vicky Dillard wrote, she's the Fly Nubian Queen upload. Fox host Laura Ingraham on reparations. We won, you lost, that's that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is real. I mean, it's something in us psychologically, black folks, we don't want to accept the deliberateness of this. And white people don't want to accept the deliberateness of it.
Well, I would say that the mere fact that slavery was instituted and that it was state sponsored was deliberate. And I think that's all that needs to be understood here. That was a deliberate act. I mean, what more deliberate do we need to discuss? I mean, the mere fact that the government said the slavery was legal, that is about as deliberate as it fucking gets at this point.
And the only way it was really stopped was through a civil war, okay, of which 10,000 battles were fought over these United States. Over 200,000 of black people were involved in this conflict, including my great-great-great-grandfather, okay, who was there, all right, was directly related to this, all right. So we have property in our family that's been in there for about 150 years. Sumter, South Carolina, yes, we do property there that we had since those days. So at the end of the day, this is really a conflict that is not even a question of whether or not, was this deliberate or whatever. A war had to stop it, okay? And then, you had the Emancipation Proclamation, which was given in 1863. But what really stopped the war was the surrender at Appomattox. And black people's massive participation in the battles after 1863, which turned the tide of the war, of which President Lincoln openly had to admit that this was the case. And here was a man who said, if I could have kept slavery and held the Union together, I would have. But the war got tight, and then black people came in who fought for a while, and we fought for equal pay. So black soldiers, in fact, during that war, were not getting equal pay. They said that we will not be paid until don't pay us until it's equal, and we're not going to accept any checks from you. But yet we still fought. Do you understand how butter laid this game is? How butter laid your ass is? And you've got Negroes sitting back here saying, no, I don't want any. I don't want it. We don't deserve it. These black bastards should be fucking shot. But that's deeply how I really see it. Most people don't understand this. They don't understand that. They don't understand that history. They don't. And,
I'm gonna tell you right.
And if they did, they'd be quiet.
I'm gonna tell you right now to go. I have no interest, right? I have no interest in listening to the opinions of a Laura Ingraham or a whoever the fuck else, whoever says, oh, well, you know, I like my equality or I like my privilege more than you being equal to me. Look, that all of that has zero bearing. Zero. Because the grievance is with the government. It ain't with your punk ass.
Yeah, but the people in opposition, that's where they're coming from.
Oh. I'm not saying that there isn't opposition.
You're always going to have opposition.
You're always going to have opposition. I was just telling a brother in the chat. I was like, well, look, if you honestly think that, you know, anyone's going to let you do anything in a venue that is based on competition, then you got another thing coming. See, so what I'm saying is that I am not interested in entertaining this idea or this notion that I have to somehow present a higher form of reasoning, right, in order to defeat the mindset of those who don't feel as though as reparations is something that's, oh, fuck them.
Hey, Mike. Mike, would you expand on a point a little bit that we were talking about before? I believe about Antigua that reparations were paid actually to some I believe Rastafari Africans who made a claim. If you want to kind of open that up a little bit and just to kind of elucidate upon this subject a little bit more, where this is actually going on. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me pull up the article. Let me see. No, this isn't the right article. All right, just give me a second. Let me see if I can pull this up.
All right. Well, Mike, while you're doing that, one other thing I just did want to say is that, you know, another thing too is we have to realize that even in this environment, we have to realize as Black people, like how much we actually give of our human resource capital to them, right? Again, to speak to what Dollar mentioned, the woman who said that she likes her white privilege. Okay, well, there's a willing participation and a lot of business activity which affords her that, right? That we willingly conduct, that allows that to happen, right? See, so there's also the idea or the notion of largely divesting and a lot of things that do not give us a direct return, but give the return to someone else. Okay, see, so there's a number of economic methods, right, that could bring about, I guess, a more of a level playing field, regardless of what the fuck that bitch thinks or how she feels. So there's things that there's actionable actionable things that can be done by ADOS people right now that can largely change the scope of things. You know, a lot of entertainers generate a lot of revenue for companies that aren't Black owned. They market and sell a lot of products that aren't made by Black folks. There's a lot of things that we lend our human resource capital to that do not net us a return. So this is multivariate. This is a multivariate discussion. Reparations is one part. The other part too is what is it that we're currently contributing, right, to the current infrastructure that does not enrich you but enriches someone else. There's that question. And then just to add one more piece to it, there's also the very things that we do culturally that basically work against our interests, that we willingly do ourselves. Now, there's plenty of discussion in this whole Black Manosphere thing that this really isn't the venue where we delve too much into that stuff. We let other people do it, but that is a part of the equation also.
Yeah, it's an actual clip. It's an actual clip of them of a Senate committee or members of Parliament actually, I guess what they call the whips, in their political sphere, discussing paying reparations to Rastafarians over slave trade. So when I find it, I'll definitely bring it up. But for right now, I'm still looking for it.
Okay. Go ahead, Dollar.
No, you guys cook some more. Go for it.
Oh no, I thought it was I thought you had something you were
Yeah,
gonna
I have a senior moment, man. It left.
add.
That's why you need reparations.
That's right. That's right.
No, so the Jamaicans actually went to the British not too long ago. I think maybe a year or so ago. No, actually, this was before Theresa May, and when David Cameron was in office, and he was the Prime Minister of England, of the UK, and they brought up reparations to the British, and this is probably like in 2015, and they said no. That's something that's not going to be discussed. So you see a lot of pushback from pale-faced people who believe that they have no obligation to anything that they've benefited from. And like Dollar Will was saying, they create this they create this structural system at the expense of non-white people. And for all intents and purposes, this is a case for the United Nations. If you look at the United Nations Charter, Chapter 7, in human rights violations, as well as the disenfranchisement of human beings in a nation state, reparations and the lack of payment is a violation of that charter. So United States as a federated body is out of compliance and actually violating UN charters that they've signed up to in 1971.
And Mike, you know, it's interesting you say that because Malcolm X was the one who even said that, look, this is going to be an issue that has to be brought up with the UN.
Oh, I know what I want.
I just want. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
It's going to be real brief. In the 60s and 50s, when we were, trying to get out the Civil Rights Act and Brown versus Board of Education, if you look it up, I believe we were in the single digits in terms of percentage of the population. So we're like 13% now or something like that. And I think we think that we were always that. So back then, if you look at the population of Asians and others, I mean, the non-white population was extremely small. I mean, this country was probably something on the order of 85% white. Okay, it really wasn't that many others here. All right, but the education that I think had to happen on a government level, that the non-white population is so significant in number that it's probably right now a national security issue if that non-white population is not meaningfully involved in the economy. It's not the same America as it was back then. And I think that's the education that white people have to have. That racism with the white birth rate going on decline, where the 8 or 9 year old today will be a minority when they reach 18 or 19. That reality suggests that old "Make America Great Again" style racism is unsustainable. The country cannot survive with it now, whereas it could survive with it back then. The numbers don't support it now.
Well, I would like to say, one of the key things for how you really bring a lot more pressure for reparations here in this country, it has to be really hit from an international perspective, and Africa is going to have to be a very big part of this. So the more or the tighter these relationships are made overseas and over on the continent, the more pressure you can put on the United States from that. It's not going to be easily done just in here. It's going to have to be done internationally. Many of the older crews understood that. Du Bois and all of them, they understood a lot of this. All right. They understood that these are the connections you're going to have to make. It's going to have to be more of an international type of conglomeration to do this.
Yeah,
And that's something that we here as African Americans just seem not to really understand. Don't understand it from a historical perspective.
yeah.
Much of our movement that we've had here in this country has had very strong international influences and pressures, and we're
Yeah,
gonna have to play that game.
I
One more
agree,
game.
Nico. I agree with you 100%. Because I think what has to happen here is that there has to. Okay, so in addition, the reparations talk has to be pursued with vigor. At the same time, we have culturally, we need to have a shift as far as Black culture goes. See, like I always kind of refer back to that Dave Chappelle skit where Black folks got reparations, right? So like, and then what do they do with it, right? What's his name? I'm trying to remember. Homeboy's name, where he bought like a box of he bought like a truckload of cigarettes and shit like that, right? So there has to be an actual cultural shift in addition to a push for reparative measures. And that cultural shift has to fall in line with more of us, ADOS, or if you whatever it is you were calling this all. What I'm just using the term because that's the term that's being used right now. Okay, but that we have to take the shift to more of an international venue. Just so what you were saying, Nagon, we have to engage in business on the continent. We have to have our resource routes going back and forth between us and the continent. And when it comes here, it goes into black banking institutions. Okay, like we have to basically refocus our thoughts and ideas on how it is that we go about enriching ourselves in this country here in America. Okay, because up until this point, we've largely we've played the human resource capital. We've played the labor. We've been the entertainment and the athletes. We've been all that shit. Okay, we have to now start thinking more in terms of like having a global stakeholder. Us, particularly, again, under the ADOS banner, whatever we're calling it. Okay, that has to be the modus operandi. And that has to start now, even while they're starting to try to get the exploratory talks on reparations. Like we're even seeing they're arguing against just having the discussion had. HR 40 is literally just a bill that just says, hey, we want to just explore the idea. They're like, no. So that would mean it's like, okay, you know what? Fuck it.
I think that's because they've already thought about it. They already know when that comes.
Look. The thing about it is this: if they're saying no now, that means 20 years ago they would have said no. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago they would have said no.
I want to share this article because this is in reference to the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Council. So for the 60th year, Germany honors duty to pay Holocaust victims. In a week when demonstrators from Greece to Spain drew parallels between Chancellor Angela Merkel's drive for austerity and the brutality of the Nazis, a symbolic act recognizing the commitment that a post-war peaceful Germany has made to many of those who survived Hitler's atrocities largely went unnoticed. Germany's post-war reparations program has become such a matter of fact that many Germans are not even aware of their country, after paying $89 billion in compensation, mostly to Jewish victims of Nazi crimes over 6 decades, still meets regularly to revise and expand the guidelines for qualification. The aim is to reach as many of the tens of thousands of elderly survivors who have never received any form of support. In prominent places among the government buildings in the heart of a reunified Berlin, Germans have placed new memorials honoring the Jewish Sinti and Roma victims. The reparations program, which was created when Konrad Can you pronounce that for me, Nagon?
Adenauer.
Yeah, I know. I thought there was an accent to it. The first chancellor of West Germany and Israel signed the Luxembourg Agreement in 1952, receives far less attention. Um, Here we started 60 years ago when the German government was on its knees economically, and yet you made this commitment. Mr. Eisenstadt said Thursday at the event. And here we are 60 years later at a time when you are bearing the burdens of Europe, and generation never even born during the war continues to fulfill its obligation. Over the years, the agreement has been amended and adapted to reflect the geopolitical changes in Europe. After the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the communist rule across Eastern Europe, and the changing needs of aging Holocaust survivors. Last year, for survivors of ghettos, the amount of time spent there to qualify for compensation was around 12, was reduced to 12 months from 18 months. As of November 1st, the program was open to survivors living in the countries previously under Soviet influence, making an estimated 80,000 more people eligible for one-time payments of $3,250. Starting next year, eligibility will extend to anyone who can prove that they hid from the Nazis for at least 6 months. The negotiations between officials of the German Finance Ministry and representatives of the Claims Conference have also evolved over the decades, though stiff silence dominated at the signing of the initial agreement. Negotiations now view the other side as partners with a common goal of trying to reach as many survivors as they can, while they still can. Roman Kent, 83, a survivor of Auschwitz in the ghetto of Lodz, Poland, said he had been involved in the talks for so long that he no longer remembered when he started. Having built a new life and a successful business in the United States where he immigrated in 1946, Mr. Kent initially had no desire to become involved in the compensation discussions or travel to Germany. When I went the first time, I felt extremely uncomfortable to be there, he said, as of his initial round of negotiations. At one point during that first discussion, Mr. Kent said he made clear to the Germans across the table how difficult, how emotional, how the process was for him. On Thursday, Mr. Kent opened his speech with a quotation from a German poet, Heinrich Heine, who converted to Christianity from Judaism. Mr. Kent drew a parallel reflecting how the process of working with the former enemy toward a common goal has altered his perception. We survivors and the Germans of today are together united, Mr. Kent said. Both of us do not want our past to be our children's future. Not that the process is always smooth, although the compensation has been supported through the years by German governments on both sides of the political spectrum. They must negotiate within the constraints of a federal budget. An investigation begun in 2010 found that employees of the Claims Conference had been involved in a scheme to use fake identification to defraud the fund of more than $42 million, only part of which had been paid back. Julius Berman, the chairman of the Claims Conference, said that despite everything that has been accomplished, there remain as many as 50,000 victims who had never received compensation in any form. Mr. Berman also points to thousands of people scarred by the trauma of losing their parents in their childhood to the Nazis as a group still deserving recognition. Asks whether, given the millions of dollars that Germany is now pledging to help weaker economies in the Eurozone, there were thoughts that 60 years of payments to survivors was enough. Werner Gatzer, who leads the negotiations for the Germans, shook his head. We will have done enough when no more survivors remain, Mr. Gatzer said. As long as they live, we will uphold our responsibility.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Russia received their final payment for reparations in 2010 from the Germans since World War II. So for 60 years, they paid, the Germans paid Russia reparations. They made their final payment of reparations in December of 2010. If this gives you any indication of how reparations goes in modern times.
Pretty good article. But you remember we also had reparations paid to black people for Tulsa and for Rosewood and so forth. So there was reparations paid there as well. People should look at that process, how that went down as well. So there's cases made here, and we should. The biggest thing is that we just have to be politically organized and hit this thing as a very solid group. And that's the name of the game. What you're seeing is that people are fractured. There's not a lot of very strong unification on this. And even President Obama said, "Hey man, hold on a second. We may not have the political wherewithal right now to deal with this." And the only thing he was saying was that we were not organized at a level to really tackle this issue. And it's really a function of organization, formations, signals. This time.
I agree. I mean, that's the reason why I said that, in addition to pushing for that, there also has to be a cultural perception, right? A shift in that. There has to, you need a wholesale shift. You're not going to have that. You're not going to have that as long as we're fighting and arguing amongst ourselves about some of the dumb shit.
They're gonna buy rims and they're gonna do this. They're gonna.
That's one of the many things. That's one of the many things that happen.
They're gonna trick it off. I mean,
not only that, but Nagon, how can we, right? How can you have sort of like a unified stance on something like this, right? When you have and I'm going to relate it kind of more to like discussions that are had on this level here.
Look how the American Indians did it. Look how they sat down and got councils together. This is this can be done. And in many respects, it's not that difficult. It's just that so many people are talking so much crap. The Negro is not prepared to sit down and get organized.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going with it. I mean, it's like, okay, well, look, given what are hot button topics and hot button issues for us, particularly, we collectively literally are in no position to like wield any kind of weight, right? Because at any given moment, based on how we are culturally structured in this country, you could have them shines that you were just referencing, right? It's easy to pluck a couple of them and trot them out there, change the narrative, right? You can, if it was a group of men that was really pushing for this, it's easy to find a bunch of sisters, a bunch of women or whatever to undermine that shit. There's certain things, right, that shouldn't even be up for debate amongst us. There's certain shit that just really should not even be it's not up for debate. And until you have that, okay, we're gonna have a bit of an uphill battle pursuing this, because you already see what kind of battle you have in the halls of Congress. They don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm a ADOS Pan-African, because without that international link, reparations will be done for political reasons if it's done at all. It won't be because it's the right thing to do or no warm, fuzzy, feel-good reason like that. It'll be done for power or political reasons.
Of course.
And so the best way for us to, align ourselves or create more power for ourselves is to, become more Pan-African to me. I think we need to
Totally agree with that. I think that's the real answer. And most people give things up because they have to. They don't give it up
right.
because they want to. Most people are forced to give things up because there's been undue pressure put on them in which to have them to do it.
Or to put it even more plain, a lot of times people get.
Will, I just want to finish.
One sentence.
I just want to finish up, right? Nothing's been given to black people here in this country because of anything, because people wanted to do things for you. That never happened here. That never happened with us. We were always politically organized and had to fight for everything we've gotten. So no one's here has ever done anything out of the goodness of their heart in Black America. That's never happened here in this country. It's never happened. Not once.
Go ahead, Dolwell.
When people give you things, especially in situations like this, sometimes it's because it's imminent that you're going to be able to take it. Okay, so it's better to appear magnanimous and give it. Better to give than have it be taken. It's better to make a friend, a peace accord with when you're about to have a powerful enemy. That's the perfect time to make peace. And we got to get this charity feel good thing out of our mind. They're not going to give up racism until it's no longer feasible. They'll try another way, another solution, and at some point, peace and equality will just be practical, not a warm fuzzy, the right thing to do. It'll be because it promotes their safety and survival in a browning world.
I mean that may very well be true. I would say that from the position or the perspective of someone who is seeking reparative measures, though, it's not a concern, not particularly of mine, right? I mean, that's kind of whatever needs to be done to maybe sort of assuage their fears or their concerns or anything like that. Now, we've already noted here that the actual grievance is not with them. Right, it's with the government. It's with the state who actually sponsored the institution of slavery. Right. See, so in my view, those are like irrational concerns, in my view, and it's not a concern. It's not a grievance that I have to take to them first before I go to the government or to the UN. It really isn't. The mindset that we have to have is it ain't about them. It's not about them. They don't look. The only people losing anything is us. We've been staying losing for I don't know how long. Now, if we gain something, how do they lose? That's just a general question. I mean, if I gain something, if I so happen to make, $5,000 today when I typically don't, who the fuck lost? I'm just curious. Like that's why I say these aren't even things for us to even those types of grievances aren't even anything for us to even entertain. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that they compensated the slave owners, but not the they had no problem compensating the slave owners.
Of course not.
In the logistics operation. So, I should say the logistic operators, supply chain logistics. The Jews were involved in supply chain logistics from the south to the north, moving cotton that the enslaved picked. So, I say all that to say that everybody else needs to get their cut. At the end of the day, and just the fact of even researching it seems to trigger them. It's just a trigger point for them. They see the writing on the wall that their days are numbered if this goes through. So whatever perceived privilege that they do have, that perception is shocking to them. It's what they consider an identity quake.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, folks. I'm sure some number of people have watched these YouTube videos about the construction of white. You know how and that concept was constructed, and if you haven't, spend some time doing it, because it'll blow your mind, and you'll see that in order for that construct to hold up, it has to it has there has to be black on the other side of it, and black has to be down, less than, or else white doesn't mean anything. It's a deep concept. And so if we're equal and viable and prosperous, then we don't fit the definition of black as as and then they don't fit the definition of white. It's some deep stuff.
No, wait. I want to piggyback on that, Dollar, but I also want to address a comment here. Bell 4148 says their status allows them to dominate. They will lose a lot. Okay, what I'm speaking on is that I guess in the current context, right? If we are to just continue as we are, but then you receive whatever we determine as reparations, some trillions or whatever. I guess in that sense, what you have more purchasing power, you have more spending power, you have more money to buy things with, more so than they do. What? So you can buy bigger homes, make them feel lesser because now that you have more. Is that what we're referencing here with regards to status? Because I'm speaking about something else entirely. I'm speaking about a black cultural shift that has us pivoted more towards being internationally minded. To hell with what it is that they currently have. I'm saying that we have to ultimately carve out something for us, not something that basically puts us in competition with what it is that they already have. I'm not talking about that. That's why I said, okay, well, look, if I would have come up on 10 grand today, how did I just come up on a white person? If all of us came up on 10 grand today, how did we just come up on white people? We didn't. White folks they can still continue to do exactly what they're doing. I'm literally talking about a cultural shift on our part, right? That has us pivoted back towards the place of origin from whence we came. What is the industrial base that white America currently controls right now that has you frozen out of the African markets? Just curious. Can't think of one. This is what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I said, what white controlled industries currently have a market share on the continent from which it has you as black folks who originate from that continent frozen out of?
That question, the way you constructed it, it like presumes that there's a black company that's viable.
No. What I'm saying is that because there isn't an answer to that, that means that there's the agenda. That should be the. What do we always talk about largely on the Black Brain Trust? We talk about Africa, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not just happenstance. It's not just coincidence that we keep pushing this. It's not a coincidence, or it's not just random that we keep talking about what's going on there and who's going there and who's doing business. It's also not random, or it's not happenstance that that we've even spoken with African delegates, and they've told us what it is that they would like to see from us.
Yeah, but I like your question because one, it points out the problem in that when you said what white companies, well, even before you finish the question, we can all think of big white company, multinational companies that can do business anywhere in the world. But so we say, well, what's the black parallel to that? That the reason why that question can't be answered is because there is no black parallel that can compete with these big, powerful white multinational companies. So that's where we are trying to get to that level.
Dollar, my whole point.
Only when we get to that level can we really answer a fill in the blank.
Well, no, the reason why I ask it is because we cover this all the time. Okay, we cover the fact that as it stands right now, it's primarily been the Chinese, right, who have really kind of come in and given Africans the best deal, right? As far as the United States is concerned with trying to go in and set something up, look, the United States has shown what it likes to do in Africa. It's already shown its hand. So what I'm saying is that when we, and when I say we, anti-gravity, my partner and myself, right, in discussions that have been had with delegates from various countries over on the continent, what they have told us is what they desire is for us to be there. This is what they've told us. If they're telling us that their preference is for us to be there, what I'm saying is, okay, what is it that okay, I'm trying to word this correctly, because what I'm trying to say here is that we have to actually have a cultural agenda for ourselves. This is a whole scale shift that needs to take place with regards to this reparations talk. Reparations is just part of the piece. It's like half of it. But like I said, we go back to the whole Dave Chappelle skit. Okay, given what we have right now, you get reparations, what happens? But if we actually have a cultural shift that goes along with this, right? And we say, okay, you get what I'm saying? That's where I'm going with it. Yeah, so what I'm saying is, I'm not thinking about the status of white people, right? Because if we're shifting towards the place of origin from which we came, okay, well, look, how white folks are getting their money right now, they'll continue to get their money how they're getting it right now. I just asked, I said, well, what is it that we will be competing with them with on the continent from where we come from?
Oh no, if we get ourselves together, nothing.
This is all I'm saying, dude.
Yeah.
That's literally all I'm saying.
Right. The only reason point, I bring up, whites, Asians, whatever, for two reasons. One, it's the reality we're living in right now. Two, they show us how an intact culture can grow in all ways, including economically. So they've made that growth from culture, that connection between culture and commerce, but we're stuck. When we talk about when Black folks are talking about cultural things, like some Blacks think that they don't see the economics is present even in that conversation about culture. Because it is the culture connection that's going to make me say, I want to do business with you. Like the said to you, it is the presumption is that you're my brother. You're not going to take advantage of me. They didn't say all that, but that is because we have this cultural bond. So but because we're not an intact culture,
there you go.
Cultures across the world, on the various cultures that we have. Because we're not intact, because we're still in survival mode, we have to argue and put words to things that should just be innate. But that's where we are. So that's why we spin and keep having these, people say things like dumbass pro-Black, and then 20 minutes later they'll say, what are we going to do? I'm like, whoa, you just cut off the culture part, and then 20 minutes later you say we need to all get together. No, and like I try to get people to see the contradiction in those two thoughts that they have. We gotta see the link between culture and commerce.
Well, Dollar Will, I mean, if that schism doesn't involve reparations, right? I can see why it exists, why those conflicting thoughts exist. But if we're gonna craft a very real case for this, right? And this is going to be something that actually puts us in a different position, puts us in a different place. Then that means that we really would have to then take on a global perspective. Once we do that, then we can abandon one thought process for the other, right? Because as it stands right now, I mean, we get our money, we accumulate our wealth how we accumulate it, right? Even without the reparations, even with you know, what's I don't want to use the WS term, institutionalized racist policies. Even with all of that, right, we still go about trying to achieve. But if we're gonna say, okay, look, you know what, I'm sick and tired of working 3 times as hard, right, to get half the results. Then one, if we're gonna pursue the reparations argument, then 2, then that means that what we do culturally, as it stands right now, has to change. Now, if we change that, then that means that there's one mindset that can largely be abandoned. It can be we can put it to the wayside, because now we have a unified agenda, global agenda, or initiative, I should say, a global cultural initiative. Okay, backed by reparative measures. So that means that there's actually something that's going to be done once those reparative measures have been received. And this is we don't get one and then start the other, right? It kind of has to the two have to coincide. The case for reparations has to be fought for diligently. At the same time, we have to start to also develop a cultural change. We really do.
So let me see if we agree on this. And I suspect we will. I hope we do. It would be great if we got reparations, okay? But if we don't get it, it doesn't change our agenda about things we have to do to pull ourselves
No,
up.
we agree. We agree.
So if we get the fine, work for it now. Now, I mean, that's
Agreed. Totally
what
agree.
is the elephant in the room or whatever. We all know that there's no coincidence that we're having this reparations conversation in preparation for a presidential election where the Democrats lost and the party is fractured. And you know, in recent times, at least last 40, 50 years,
And
the
Dollar will
blue has been black folks.
they
And
had
so
the
now that,
Republicans.
hold on. So,
The Republicans.
huh?
It said the Republicans like to use this to try to galvanize black people together.
Well, also my point is that the Democrats have needed black folks, that block of black votes. The Democrats cannot afford for blacks to be apathetic in this election. And so we all know that this reparations talk coming at this time, it's a wonderful chess move. It wouldn't be the first time or last time we've been played. And but even with that risk, we still have to go for it, and because it might be an opportunity that we can just move the pendulum an inch or two in the correct direction. So no, we're not gullible. You know, we understand that, you know, and if it doesn't work, we still clear about the cultural work we have to do and get ready for the fourth industrial revolution, repair the culture, become a little more Africanistic, whether we get the reparations or not.
Well, wait a minute though, Dollar. I mean, Mike just read that article. I mean, you got dudes that are still negotiating with the Germans right now over the Nazi imprisonment. 65 years later.
Right.
65 years later.
This is what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about, diligence, man, and a cultural shift. Look,
I think.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just responding to black folks that like to say, "Oh, you know, y'all wasting your time." No, we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Exactly.
Other things at the same time. It don't hurt us to work towards the future while we're working towards the present.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
I was just chiming into Complex's thought that the Germans are still paying reparations. Most of those people who are, supposedly have been enslaved, not enslaved, but incarcerated in these internment camps. There's no real way to verify them. And from my research, there's no real way to verify. I mean, unless there's some kind of tattoo on their wrist or something. How do you verify that? These people should be long gone at this point. They were long gone when the Americans got there and the Russians got there. So how are they still? Who are they paying, and why are they paying Israel, the state of Israel, money for
Because
something
of
that
political power.
right?
Israel is a power. Politically, they are strong.
Well, yeah,
You
but they can,
know, and with the United States, that's what this shit comes down to, man.
even the United States is paying reparations for the Holocaust, and they put from a state standpoint didn't have anything to do with it. But that's what they claim, right? They claim that the United States, owes reparations to the Jews as well. But a lot of those Jewish people who have been compensated may have not even received their funds, and the funds may have gone somewhere else. And these are some of the things that we need to worry about, that there may be people within our community that actually may take advantage of these type of things.
Okay, Mike, two things. Well, hold
count
on.
on that.
Mike, two things.
Count on that.
So, Mike, two things. In that article, I think it mentioned that there was a fund that was set aside to the tune of $42 million, and a good portion of it had gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that speaks to one part of it. Now, the other part, you said that last point you just said, okay, this type of thing might possibly some of our own actually compromising this type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you remember some months back, we covered Cynthia Nixon's run for, was it the Senate in New York? She's running against Cuomo, and one of her key points was with the legalization measure of marijuana in the state of New York. Her platform, one of the main things that she was pushing for was, and I still don't understand why this was a bad thing for her to say, but she used the term reparations in reference to having immediate access for Black-owned hemp and cannabis companies, right? They get put to the front of the line with regards to business licensing and all of that type of stuff. Okay, Mike, who was it that stepped in and blocked that shit?
I think it was your religious leaders, if I remember correctly.
Yes, sir. Black pastors.
Yeah.
You talking about that jack-legged pastor?
There was like 5 or 6 of them. Which one?
Oh no, they're all jack-legged. But anyway, go ahead.
But no, that's exactly what Mike was saying right there. See, because what happened was that she used the word reparations. She basically said, okay, well, look, we had a history of stop and frisk, Black and brown folks being heavily policed and busted for basically having like a sack of herb on them. Whereas a white boy in downtown Manhattan, if he had a little sack on him, the cop would just be like, hey, get out of here with that. Right? Okay. So when she said that, look, all of this was unfair, and what needs to be done is we need to do things to correct this. So that means that if we're going to be talking legalization, because what comes with legalization? Money. Money comes with legalization. So if we're going to talk about legalization, if we're going to talk about doing this in the state of New York, then we also need to talk about repairing what was done to people who were wrongly policed for this. And when she used the word reparations, no one seemed to have a problem with that except Black pastors. So just to speak to what Mike was just saying, we got to be aware of some of our own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had, you and I had that. It's just a load of.
Why did the Black pastors have a problem? What was their major issue with this?
Because she's white.
And she used the term reparations.
Yeah, that was the
main reason. That was like what triggered it.
Yeah, she should not have used that word. She should have said it another way. I know that's what the word means, but the word also has meanings within context of politics and culture too. And so that it's back. That word has a unique meaning to us in our history. And so when she used that word, I mean, if you say it to a black person, it's like if I said the word Holocaust to a Jew, they're going to think of it in that word and within the context of their culture. And so if somebody said reparations to a black person, we're going to think of it in the context of our culture.
Is it a bad thing? A bad thing?
No, it just is. I'm just saying. So, but I'm saying if that's not what she meant, then she could have communicated that point without saying that word.
Well, I mean, a reparation is.
I know what that is.
Right. So the word wasn't misplaced. The issue, and especially if she also gave intent behind the use of the word, right? There should have been no question of what it was that she meant by it.
Yeah, and I don't think she was. I don't think she was out of line with it at all. To be quite frank with you, because reparations, in my view, on that is actually appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen. It can reparation could be as a result of slavery. It could be as the result. The only reason why I bring this up, not to divulge into a discussion as to what Cynthia Nixon meant. The only reason why I brought it up because Mike made a point. He was saying, look, one of the things that we would also have to factor in here is that we may even have to deal with opposition from our very own with regards to reparations.
Yeah. If she was talking about a policy to create justice or repair an injury to a specific group of people over a specific issue but that was not necessarily tied to the slavery thing, that's an important distinction. It's sort of like these idiots. Remember that idiot that said said that, you know, speaking of Obama being elected as president as reparations for black people, as part of any way reparations for black people.
That's a misuse. That's a misusing of the term. But in reference to Cynthia Nixon, she was really referring to social equity.
Right. Exactly.
But social equity is a form of reparation.
We got that, but I'm saying if you're trying to communicate a point, you can't be so wedded to a word, although the definition supports that you can use it that way. That's why we have synonyms, so you can choose another word that don't necessarily come with any baggage that you don't necessarily intend.
Okay.
That's all.
So are we supposed to throw this all out the window because she didn't use a synonym?
No. Okay.
That's my whole point. It really shouldn't have been an issue. And the thing about it is that if anybody was going to take issue with her, it shouldn't have been black folks. It really shouldn't, because the whole thing was that she was actually pushing to do things to correct what was done wrong. But I mean, and again, I don't want to divulge into the word, the actual word and the synonyms. I'm going to circle back to Mike's main point. Okay, what you have to be wary of is the fact that you will have your own who will actually tank the whole thing and will serve as roadblocks to it.
They'll sandbag it.
Them dudes who were at the HR 40 hearing. Who was it? Burgess, what's his name? And the other brother that was there? Same shit. Yeah. They're no different than the black pastors, dude, who took issue with Cynthia Nixon. They are no different. It's the same shit.
All I'm saying is that, yeah, you know, whatever. There was a misunderstanding or whatever. But at some point, just like you and I talked about it from our particular points of view on it, we don't necessarily agree on it, but I understand what she meant. And so I know that what she meant was not the way I initially took it. And so, the tragedy in that situation is, once it was so easy to see what the disagreement was, they never said, okay, this is what she meant. Let's continue on with the conversation.
That was my whole point, because then the shit gets derailed.
It never progressed. The fact that they had a disagreement or over the word, that should not have, it's not a problem. That's language is imprecise. That's always going to happen. But once you see what the disagreement is, you get past it. The tragedy is it never got past it.
That's the thing. And then what I'm saying is this: if so much as a disagreement on the application of a word is going to actually derail something, we're fucked.
Well, I think we're fucked that when someone uses a word that's I guess culturally sensitive to your audience you're talking to, and it doesn't have the desired effect, because that's human. That's gonna happen. Okay, that we can't get past that, but to expect that nobody's going to make a mistake, nobody's going to choose the wrong word or say the wrong thing, that everything has to be, it's not going to be perfect, you know. And it's just sad that the maturity wasn't there to say, okay, she's trying to do the right thing. This is her concept. It's a pretty good idea. We're not having the reparations for slavery discussion with her. We're doing this is reparation for something else. It's
right.
These are two different trains, okay?
Right.
And so they could never. You and I got to that point. Why couldn't they get to that point? And we see things differently, and we got to that point. Oh, we having two different conversations. This conversation don't have nothing to do with 80 slavery.
That was particular to the state of New York, man.
Exactly.
And what has been going on with black folks in the state of New York.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In recent times about some drug laws, right?
About some drug laws, exactly.
Exactly. That's the crisis, that they couldn't get past that, and they missed the opportunity to do something. It just got derailed over some bull.
And that's my fear with this right here. Right? And I'm just echoing Mike's sentiment. Something like that. You know, and this is why I say that a cultural shift is imperative at this moment in time. It really is.
Yeah, I think the wrong people are at the helm of these discussions. Those shines who are in the hearing committee for HR 40 shouldn't have been there to begin with. I mean, what are you arguing against? It's just the HR 40 is just for research into the matter. It's not like they're going to give it away, Monday morning or when they receive their taxes. It's just research, and the fact that it's
those shines are there to shut it down. The shines are there to fuck it over. Pardon the expression.
Yeah, and the fact that you have certain people like this even existing, we have to figure out what we're going to do with people like that to begin with, because we can't have any disruptions to these people with these people who are in opposition to the best interests of Black people collectively. Something needs to be done with those people. I probably would go through my history and say that the Haitian Revolution knew exactly what to do with people like that, and maybe we can pull and learn a lesson from there.
I don't think what do I have to say about that one.
Oh, the Haitian Revolution was a magnificent piece of work that has been done in terms of slave revolts and what they did with people who befriended them and did not have their best interests.
Yeah, they took them on the beach and fucking beheaded them bastards. Now, and that was the end of that. That ended it. But the Haitians did have to pay the French back reparations.
Yeah.
Which, in my view, was something that really slowed down and kind of destroyed the country, to be quite frank.
Still affecting them to this day.
And Dr. Gerald Horne and some other historians would agree with that, because I certainly read that and got that information deeply from.
Well, don't forget that the Haitians were supposed to receive a settlement in terms of compensation as a form of reparations not too long ago of $30 billion. We saw that the United States interfered with that one.
Yep.
Well.
Yep.
Maybe because they were worried that if France has to pay reparations, who else has to pay reparations for slavery?
Yeah. And there's some other issues that have some deeper political issues because Haiti and some of these other countries were looking to become a part of the AU and so forth. There's a lot of other shit going on that I think plays deeply behind the scenes as well. So, you know what I'm saying, Mike?
And that's where our Pan-Africanism can come into place when other blacks throughout the diaspora trying to get reparations from their white colonizer. You know, the whole group should support it. And the money that comes, that's their money. You know?
Yeah. I still think this is something that should have been done by black people. If anything, they should have had a foolproof plan instead of just having a hearing. They should have had a packet and a docket put together with all necessary evidence and information and cited sources to put this together. Because it seems like every time they have these hearings, you have, and I don't mean to knock any ADOS supporters, but you have all these people in the lobbies and in the overfill rooms and whatnot, and it's like, if you're not really there, with specific specific material on the matter, I think you should actually stay home. I think that only credible people should be in the room having this discussion, and not people who just show up just to be showing up. And it's like, you really don't have anything to say. You really don't have anything to contribute. And that's where the naysayers come in, and that's where the disruption comes from.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's the last word.
Is there anything in the chat, I guess, before we close out or anything?
While you're looking for that, I'm gonna say look for some stuff on my channel this week. I gotta deal with that rise in the S&P, the rise in gold, some suspicious stuff going on with that S&P.
What about Bitcoin there, Dollar Will?
Gotta deal with that one too.
Gotta
deal with that one too. Structurally, the short of it is, in order for it has not risen, neither gold nor Bitcoin has or for that matter, the S&P has risen to the point where structurally we could say it's out of, let me say it this way, a 50% retrace would be common in Elliott wave theory. Retraces are ABC pattern, and the big B wave is what if this could be a B wave. As long as it's up to that 50% area structurally, it's still not out of danger to say that the bottom is in. So,
well, I would just like to say, for a quick fundamental point, I'm not going to get into any deeper. Dollar Will, you can tackle this one as well. Look at your leading and lagging economic indicators. I'm out.
And stock price is routinely listed among leading indicators.
Facts. All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you all for joining us. And if you have not hit the like button already, please do so. Also, we will be back tomorrow with, I guess, Black Car Talk. Talk about some racing and
yay,
Le Mans 24 and everything else.
Hey, Nürburgring 24 hours is going on right now as well.
Yeah, the great esteemed Paul Bryant will be hosting tomorrow night, so make sure you all look out for that.
I would love to be there. I'm going to be in DC tomorrow, so I'm leaving 5 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know if I'll be able to.
Make sure you
to rise up for that, but hopefully I can. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, make sure when you stop in DC, you say what up to Dollar Will.
Dollar Will, man, you in DC, baby?
Not right now.
Okay. Oh no, you hide. No, you hide.
Let's get off the air. Let's get off. I ain't sharing this.
Hey, and then Sunday's Black Cannabis Talk as well.
All right.